I sent the message at 2:17 a.m. No name, no profile picture, just a blank account and a truth I knew would detonate someone else's life the moment he opened it. My thumb hovered over the screen longer than I want to admit, not because I was unsure, but because once I pressed send, there was no version of the story where I stayed silent anymore. You see, months earlier, I thought I was falling in love. Turns out I was just the other guy, and when I realized I wasn't the first man she betrayed, I decided I wouldn't be the last one who knew. If you've ever trusted someone who smiled to your face while lying behind your back, if you've ever felt that slow, humiliating realization that you were the fool in someone else's game, then stay with me, because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when silence stops feeling like the mature choice and telling the truth becomes the only way to breathe again. Hit like, subscribe, and brace yourself, because this one doesn't end quietly. I didn't meet her in a dramatic way. No spilled drinks, no lightning strike moment in a crowded bar, just a conversation that refused to stay shallow. She was 26, I was 33, old enough to know better, young enough to hope anyway. We met online, one of those random interactions that wasn't supposed to matter. At first, it didn't. We talked about nothing important. Music, work, travel, the usual safe topics people use to feel each other out without risk. But then something shifted. Our conversations started stretching longer. The replies came faster. And somewhere between jokes and late-night voice notes, I noticed something unsettling. I cared. Not in the dramatic, reckless way, in the quiet way that sneaks up on you. The way where you start checking your phone without realizing it. The way her name feels heavier than the others. She listened. Really listened. When I talked about my job, she asked questions instead of nodding politely. When I mentioned my family, she remembered details weeks later. When I joked, she laughed in a way that made me want to keep talking. Not louder, not bigger, just longer. October turned into November. November into December. And by then, it didn't feel like a coincidence anymore. I live abroad. Different country, different routine, different life. Normally, that's where things fizzle out. But with her, distance didn't dull anything. It sharpened it. We talked every day. Good morning messages, random photos of whatever she was doing, late-night conversations where the world felt smaller and quieter, like it was just the two of us suspended in the dark. She told me about her dreams. I told her about my doubts. I didn't rush it. I didn't label it. I wanted to do it right. So when December came and I told her I was flying home for Christmas, to see my family, yes, but also to finally see her in person, she sounded excited. Too excited. "I can't wait," she said. "I feel like I already know you." I felt that too. Being back in my home country always messes with my head. Old streets, old habits, old versions of myself I thought I'd outgrown. But she felt new. The first time we met, there was no awkward pause, no forced smiles, no polite distance. She hugged me like I belonged there. Her voice sounded exactly the same in person. Warm, slightly teasing, familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. We walked, we talked, we laughed. Hours passed without either of us checking the time. I remember thinking, this is easy. That dangerous word, easy. We spent days together. Coffee, long walks, quiet moments where conversation wasn't even necessary. I wasn't trying to impress her. She wasn't performing for me. At least, that's what I thought. I told myself I was being careful, taking it slow, letting it grow naturally. Inside, though, something reckless had already started rooting itself. Hope. There's a certain look someone gives you when they want you to feel chosen. She had it perfected. Not overly affectionate, not clingy, just enough warmth to make you feel special. When she listened, she leaned in. When she smiled, it lingered. When she touched my arm, it felt deliberate, but casual enough to deny. I noticed small things. She never mentioned anyone else romantically, never talked about dating apps, never joked about exes the way people usually do. When someone asked her if she was seeing anyone, she deflected, changed the subject, smiled, and looked away. I interpreted that as privacy. I didn't realize it was practice. The closer January got, the heavier everything felt. Not in a bad way, more like the weight of something meaningful. I knew I'd be leaving soon, flying back to my resident country, returning to routine and distance. One night we sat together quietly, the city humming around us. I remember thinking how still she felt beside me, comfortable, familiar. "I don't want this to disappear when you leave," she said. Neither did I. I told her I wanted something real, not rushed, not messy, but intentional. She nodded, smiled softly, said nothing that contradicted me. That should have been the first crack. A few days before my flight back, everything collapsed. Not with a confession, not with tears, with information. Someone mentioned her casually in conversation, not accusing, not dramatic, just a passing comment that didn't fit the story I'd been living in. Her boyfriend's name is... I didn't hear the rest. It felt like the air in my lungs forgot how to work. I laughed at first. A reflex, a defense. "No," I said, "that's not... she doesn't..." But the certainty in their voice didn't waver. And suddenly, the past few months replayed themselves in my head, not as memories, but as evidence. The deflections, the silences, the carefully controlled openness. I confronted her that night, not angrily, quietly. And that's when she told me. Yes, she had a boyfriend. Yes, it had been going on the whole time. No, she didn't mean for it to happen like this. I didn't yell. I went numb. It felt like someone had poured ice water down my spine. My hands shook, not visibly, but internally, like something inside me was vibrating too fast. I remember staring at her mouth as she talked, thinking how strange it was that the same lips that had whispered things meant only for me were now forming excuses. She said she was confused. She said she didn't want to hurt anyone. She said she cared about me. Every sentence landed wrong because the math didn't add up. You don't accidentally build a connection like that. You don't accidentally hide someone for months. You don't accidentally let a man fly countries believing he mattered. I left shortly after. January came anyway, and winter. Back in my resident country, winter hit hard. Gray skies, short days, long nights. We talked for a few days after I left, trying to process, she said, trying to figure things out. But every message hurt. Every reply felt like reopening a wound I didn't know how to close. So I did the only thing I could do to survive it. I cut contact, blocked, muted, gone. Not because I didn't care, but because caring was destroying me. I told myself it was over. I told myself I'd heal. I told myself she was just a lesson. What I didn't know yet was that she hadn't learned a thing. The first few weeks after I cut contact felt like walking through fog. Not dramatic pain, not sobbing on the floor grief, just this constant pressure in my chest, like something unfinished was sitting there, waiting. Winter has a way of amplifying everything. The days ended before they felt like they started. The sun showed up half-heartedly, then disappeared again, like it didn't want to be involved. I went to work, I came home, I ate without tasting anything, and in the quiet moments, those dangerous moments right before sleep, my mind replayed things I didn't invite back. Her laugh, the way she said my name, the exact tone she used when she said, "I didn't mean to hurt you." That sentence haunted me more than the betrayal itself, because it sounded rehearsed. Everyone tells you the same thing after something like this. Let it go. Focus on yourself. Karma will handle it. So I tried. I deleted old photos, stopped checking her social media, avoided places that reminded me of December. I told myself that exposing her would only drag me down to her level, that it wasn't my place, that I'd be the villain if I said anything. She had a boyfriend. He deserved to find out, but not from me. That's what I kept repeating. I wanted to believe silence meant strength, but there was a thought that kept returning, unwelcome and persistent. What if I wasn't the first? It crept in during idle moments, while washing dishes, while staring out the window, while scrolling aimlessly through my phone. People don't usually wake up one day and start living double lives. They practice, they get comfortable, they learn what they can get away with. And suddenly, my story didn't feel unique anymore. It felt patterned. I found it by accident. One night, unable to sleep, I was scrolling through Reddit, just killing time, not looking for anything specific. Then I saw a post. The phrasing felt familiar, the tone, the details. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. It was her. Different username, same voice. She was talking about another guy, flirting, fishing for attention. All while still very much in a relationship. My heart started pounding, not fast, but heavy, like each beat was hitting something solid inside my chest. I read the post twice, then a third time. There it was, proof that what happened to me wasn't a mistake, it was a habit. She wasn't confused, she was comfortable lying. Something shifted inside me that night. The sadness I'd been carrying for weeks didn't disappear, but it rearranged itself. It sharpened. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was insulted, because now it was clear. I hadn't been special, I'd been convenient. A voice inside my head, quiet but relentless, started asking questions I didn't want to answer. How many men didn't know about each other? How many conversations overlapped? How many lies did she juggle without losing sleep? And then the thought that made my jaw clench so hard it hurt. Her boyfriend has no idea. Up until then, her boyfriend had been an abstract concept, a faceless obstacle in a story where I was already wounded. But now he felt real. A guy going about his life trusting someone who smiled at him every day, someone who told him she loved him, someone who probably reassured him whenever he felt insecure. I imagined him defending her, making excuses for her, believing her without question, the way I had. And suddenly, staying silent didn't feel noble anymore. It felt like complicity. I hadn't planned to collect evidence, but when someone lies long enough, they leave traces everywhere. Messages, voice notes, screenshots, memories you don't realize are weapons until you're forced to look at them differently. I scrolled back through our conversations, not nostalgically, but analytically. Dates overlapped, timelines conflicted, affection flowed freely during times she claimed she was busy. There was no ambiguity anymore. This wasn't emotional cheating. This was calculated. There was one thing I hesitated to think about: a voice recording. At the time, it felt intimate, private, something that existed only between two people who trusted each other. Now it felt radioactive. I stared at my phone for a long time, wrestling with the weight of it. I knew what it meant. Once shared, it couldn't be taken back. Once heard, it would change everything. My stomach twisted at the thought. But then I remembered her Reddit post, her casual flirting, her ease, and the guilt I'd been carrying started to shift direction. I paced my apartment, phone in hand, back and forth, back and forth. Every step felt like an argument with myself. This isn't your responsibility. You're going to regret this. Just walk away. But another voice answered back, louder each time. She's going to keep doing this. He deserves to know. If not you, then who? I wasn't chasing revenge yet, not consciously. I just wanted the truth to exist somewhere outside my head. It happened quietly. No dramatic music, no sudden rage. Just a moment where I stopped pacing, looked at my phone, and felt strangely calm. I created a new account. No name, no photo, no history. Anonymous. I found his profile, saw photos of them together, smiling, happy, unaware. My chest tightened. I imagined him opening a message that would fracture his reality the same way mine had fractured months earlier. And for the first time since January, I didn't feel powerless. My thumb hovered over the screen again, just like it would later at 2:17 a.m., but this time it wasn't hesitation, it was gravity. I knew exactly what I was about to do. I wasn't sure if it was right, I wasn't sure if it was clean, I wasn't even sure if it would make me feel better. But I was certain of one thing. She didn't get to keep doing this in the dark. Not anymore. I didn't rush it. That's the part people never believe. They imagine rage, shaking hands, reckless decisions made in a spike of emotion. But this wasn't that. This was slow, deliberate, almost surgical. I sat at my desk with the lights off, the glow of my phone the only thing illuminating the room. Outside, the city was quiet in that late-night way that makes everything feel more exposed, like the world is holding its breath. I opened the anonymous account again, still blank, still clean. I clicked on his profile. There they were, photos of them together, smiling, arms around each other, holidays, inside jokes frozen in captions. He looked normal, not a villain, not some faceless other guy, just a man who trusted the wrong person. My jaw tightened. I started typing, then deleted it, typed again, deleted again. Every version sounded wrong. Too angry and I'd look unhinged, too calm and it wouldn't land. I didn't want to insult her, I didn't want to threaten him, I didn't even want to convince him. I just wanted the truth to exist in his world the way it now existed in mine, unavoidable. Finally, I wrote something simple, something impossible to misunderstand. I'm sorry to message you like this. I'm doing this anonymously because I don't want anything from you. But you deserve to know that your girlfriend has been talking to and seeing other men behind your back. I stared at it for a long time. My pulse was slow, heavy. I added more. Dates, timeframes, enough detail to make it real, not enough to feel cruel. Words alone are easy to dismiss. Anyone can lie in a DM. I knew that. So I attached screenshots. Her Reddit post, her words, her tone. Context without commentary. Just enough to say, this isn't a misunderstanding. I hesitated before the final attachment. The recording. My throat tightened just looking at the file. This wasn't anger anymore. It was weight. I remembered how private it had felt at the time, how real, how trusting. And now, here it was, reduced to proof. I didn't play it again. I didn't need to. I attached it. Not with explanation, not with drama, just there. My thumb hovered over send. Again, I thought about the version of me from December, the one who believed in slow growth, in doing things right, in honesty meaning something. I thought about January, the numbness, the silence, the way winter had pressed down on my chest until breathing felt optional. And then I thought about her Reddit post. Casual, flirty, unbothered. That's when I realized something uncomfortable. This wasn't just about justice. It was about balance. She had walked away untouched. I had carried everything. That didn't feel fair. I pressed send. Nothing happened immediately. No notification, no response. just a quiet, irreversible shift. I set my phone down and leaned back in my chair. My body felt strangely light, like I'd been holding tension for months and finally loosened my grip. Then came the nausea, a slow, creeping unease that started in my stomach and worked its way up. What if he didn't believe me? What if he confronted her immediately? What if she knew it was me? I rubbed my hands together, realizing they were cold. I hadn't thought this far ahead. The next day dragged. Every vibration of my phone made my heart jump. Every notification that wasn't that notification left me simultaneously relieved and disappointed. I kept telling myself I didn't need a response, that I'd done my part. But that was a lie. I needed to know it landed. It wasn't a message that told me something had changed. It was Instagram. Her account? Private. No explanation, no warning, just gone behind a wall. I stared at the screen longer than necessary. That alone didn't mean anything. People go private all the time. But then I checked his profile. Her name? Gone. No tagged photos, no affectionate captions, no trace. It was subtle, quiet, but unmistakable. Something had happened. I pictured him sitting somewhere, phone in hand, listening to the recording. The initial denial, the way your brain tries to protect you by rejecting reality. Then the details lining up, the screenshots, the dates. That moment when the lie collapses inward and everything you thought was solid turns hollow. I didn't feel joy imagining that. I felt recognition, because I'd been there. She never reached out. No angry message, no accusation, no attempt to explain. That told me more than any confrontation ever could. People who feel wronged defend themselves. People who get caught go quiet. I thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated, but what washed over me instead was something calmer, heavier, relief. Like I finally put down a burden I didn't realize I'd been carrying. The story was no longer trapped inside me. It was shared, balanced. That night, guilt made one final attempt to reclaim territory. You crossed a line. You hurt people. You weren't clean in this. And maybe that was true. But then another thought followed, steady and grounded. So did she. The difference was, I stopped it. I didn't destroy her life. I didn't expose her publicly. I didn't shame her to friends or family. I told one person the truth. What he did with it was his choice. And judging by the silence, he chose himself. Days passed, then weeks. Nothing. No retaliation, no fallout. Just absence. And in that absence, something inside me finally loosened. The anger didn't vanish, but it no longer owned me. I slept better, ate better, breathed deeper. Winter still existed, but it didn't feel endless anymore. Some people mistake kindness for blindness. They think if they keep things vague enough, quiet enough, they can live multiple lives without consequence. They forget that truth doesn't need volume. It just needs one place to land. What surprised me most wasn't her disappearance. It was how normal the world kept going afterward. The sun still came up. People still laughed on the street. My phone still buzzed with meaningless notifications. No dramatic fallout, no public explosion, just quiet. And in that quiet, I finally had space to feel everything I'd been postponing. Weeks passed. Her Instagram stayed private. His profile stayed scrubbed clean of her existence. No new photos, no passive-aggressive quotes, no cryptic captions. It was as if she'd been erased from his life with deliberate precision. That told me more than any angry confrontation ever could. Because when someone is innocent, they fight to be understood. When someone is exposed, they retreat. I found myself revisiting everything, not obsessively, but reflectively. October, November, December. I saw now what I couldn't see then. How she controlled the pace, how she kept things intense but undefined, how she gave just enough vulnerability to disarm me, but never enough to risk herself. She wasn't reckless, she was skilled. That realization stung, but it also freed me, because it meant her betrayal wasn't about my worth, it was about her pattern. People love to ask, "Do you regret it?" I sat with that question longer than I expected. Do I regret hurting someone? No, because I didn't hurt him, I warned him. Do I regret crossing a moral line? Maybe, but not enough to wish I'd stayed silent, because silence would have meant accepting that what she did was survivable for her, and it shouldn't have been. Revenge stories usually end with triumph, smirks, victory speeches, mic drops. This one didn't. What I felt was quieter but deeper. Validation. Not from watching her fall, but from knowing I wasn't crazy. That what I felt in January wasn't weakness, it was intuition screaming to be heard, and I finally listened. Here's the part most people miss. The power wasn't in sending the message. The power was in no longer protecting her lies. For months, I'd carried her secret like it was my responsibility. I absorbed the damage so she could walk away clean. That imbalance was the real injustice. The moment the truth left my hands, I stopped carrying it. And suddenly, she had to. I don't know. And for the first time, I genuinely don't care. Maybe she convinced herself she was the victim. Maybe she blamed me. Maybe she learned nothing at all. But one thing is certain, she lost the luxury of being trusted without question. And that's not revenge. That's consequence. I hope he walked away. I hope he doubted his instincts for a moment, then trusted them again. I hope he didn't beg for explanations that were never going to be honest. Most of all, I hope he realized something important early enough to save years of his life, because I didn't get that chance. The real payoff didn't come with fireworks. It came the night I realized I could think about her and feel nothing sharp anymore. No heat in my chest, no clenching jaw, no urge to check. Just distance. That's when it hit me. She no longer had power over my emotional state, and that was the most satisfying outcome I could have imagined. Because revenge isn't about destruction, it's about reclaiming control. And I had. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Good people often lose because they wait for fairness to appear on its own. They assume honesty will eventually be rewarded, that silence is maturity, that walking away means winning. Sometimes, walking away just means disappearing quietly while the other person keeps playing the same game. Justice doesn't always come from confrontation, but it almost never comes from pretending nothing happened. What I learned is this: you don't owe your silence to someone who betrayed you. You owe yourself peace. And sometimes, peace requires truth, delivered calmly, deliberately, and without apology. If this story hits something personal for you, if you've ever been lied to, minimized, or made to feel disposable, hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me, was this justice, or did I go too far? And if you want more real, raw, emotionally charged revenge stories like this one, subscribe to the channel Taking Revenge Hour, because some stories don't end with forgiveness, they end with balance. And sometimes, that's exactly what we need.